You'd be surprised just how many people apply for jobs in advertising and just fart out their CV without thinking too much about it. They put on their paper round, the fact they were captain of their university hockey team, they put their 2-1 in their degree from Whateverfordshire University, and then they just sling it out to as many different opportunities as they can. And a lot of them get jobs too. When you say you want to get a job in advertising, most people's parents will turn around and say, oh, well, I've heard it's really competitive and you have to be really lucky to get a job, which is bullshit. Like anything in life, you need a dash of luck, but there are ways of stacking the deck in your favour, especially you, because you're already here trying to work out how to do it. Welcome to Media Imposter. My name's Jack, and I'm here to help you make sense of advertising, creativity, and careers. Today, I'm going to give you 5 questions that will help you start narrowing down your application options, working out what sort of career you want to have in advertising, start thinking in ways that will make your application stand out, your interview get remembered, and ultimately get you hired. The first question is, which half of the advertising industry do you want to work in? There are 2 halves to the advertising industry: creative and media. They used to sit together, but in the late 20th century they split, and now a brand will hire both a creative agency and a media agency in order to execute their advertising campaigns. Creative is the side of the industry that most people will think of when they think of the advertising industry. It's Don Draper's side of the industry. Creative agencies come up with the actual content of the adverts that you see and hear. They come up with ideas like the talking meerkats, the Italian puppets, and of course the Winston Wolfe emergency line. The other side of this is media. It's the side of the industry I work in, and like Tottenham's trophy case, it's completely invisible to outsiders. But unlike Tottenham's trophy case, it does actually exist. On this side of the industry, agencies plan where the advertising is going to be seen or heard, and by what audience. Although it doesn't have creativity in its name, there's still plenty of opportunity to flex your creative muscles. Once we've planned the advertising campaign, we buy the media space from media owners. Media owners are simply companies that own space in which brands can advertise. YouTube is a media owner, Google, Facebook, ITV, Sky, JCDecaux. There are endless media owners, and they all offer different career paths. It's worth giving some thought if there are ones that you would specifically want to work for. So what do you fancy? Creative or media? You might fancy a bit of both, but it can help to specialise your application and really focus it in on just one area. The second question is, what size of agency do you want to work in? Do you want to work in a big network agency, or would you rather work for a smaller independent agency? It might sound like an odd question, but it can have a huge difference at the start of your career. Big agencies have a lot of benefits. They draw in those big name clients that are going to make your CV look great at the start of your career. They often run graduate schemes that will give you a great start at an agency and rotate you around the different departments, giving you a lot of experience early on. And they have big fancy offices that make you feel like you've hit the big time. You'll work with loads of other people around the same age as you, most likely, and there'll be a lot of fun initiatives that you can get involved with. I've worked in big network agencies before, and they're a lot of fun and a really good place to cut your teeth. On the downside, it can be quite hard to progress in a big network agency. There'll be a lot of bureaucracy that can keep you in one place, and it can also stifle the responsibility that you're handed. Getting a pay rise can sometimes be a monumental task. It's not easy wherever you go, but it can be even harder because of those layers of bureaucracy. And ultimately, because of the sheer size of the place, it can be difficult to stand out and make a name for yourself. Smaller agencies and networks can give you opportunities to start working with clients sooner. You'll have to muck in with a lot of different tasks and often be asked to do things outside of your job remit, but these can result in you getting better experience and ultimately getting better at your job faster. If you do well, it's easier to stand out. The downside of working at a small agency, however, is that you won't have that big support system around you. Neither is the wrong choice, but it's really important to have a think about what you want from an agency. The third question is, what brands can you think of that impress you with their comms? When you first think about this, it can be easy to go, oh, I like that brand, so I want to go and work on them. But in reality, their comms might be super dull. You want to think about brands that run proper multi-channel ad campaigns that, if you worked on, would offer you the chance to develop your experience. You'll probably be asked what brands you admire when you're in an interview. Be prepared to say who they are and what they do that impresses you. Don't say Apple, Google, or Tesla, or another big brand that everyone else will say. Yeah, Apple are a great brand, but everyone's going to say Apple. So think of an answer that's going to make you stand out to someone who's interviewing you and show that you've thought about it. I remember back in my first interview, I was asked about this, and I'm ashamed to say I did say Apple, but then as I realised that it was a little bit generic, I wheeled back and said, well, probably everyone says Apple, and instead used the examples of Paddy Power and Guinness, two Irish brands that both approach comms in completely different ways. Paddy Power are really mischievous bookies, and they understand what makes their audience tick and what entertains them, enabling them to grab their audience's attention and keep them coming back. Guinness could easily just be twee and Irish with their marketing, but instead they subvert expectations with brilliant ads like the famous Guinness Surfer ad or the absolutely ingenious Sapeurs advert. My fourth question for you is to have a think about what strengths you have as a person and what sort of roles these might lead you towards. Yeah, you've got your qualifications, you've finished school, you've done well, and you're intelligent. All of these are important, but it's also important to sit down and take the time to do an audit of your personal strengths. Are you a people person who can get on with anyone, who feels really comfortable in a room talking to other people? Is it quite easy to get on with others? If so, then you might make a brilliant client manager or account planner. Do you find numbers and spreadsheets easy? Are you really good at analysing data? Then you might be a really strong addition to a business science team. Are you comfortable negotiating and not conflict averse? Then buying or media sales might be a great option for you. Try and think about what you find easy, what you find difficult, and what you've always been naturally drawn to. Out of this, you've got a really good starting off point for working out what kind of role that you actually want to go into. The fifth and final question is, what are you doing outside of your studies or your job currently that's going to make you stand out and make someone pick you over the next person in line? This is an important one. Most candidates are going to have a 2-1 or better from a reasonable university. This is an important one. Most candidates will have the degree, they'll have the position on whatever university society, but ultimately it is quite easy to make yourself stand out from this sea of mediocrity. Do something related to advertising that would make a hiring manager notice you. You could start your own advertising blog, talking about the different campaigns that you've seen and why you like them. Comment on the type of audience you think they're going after and what insight might be driving the ideas behind the campaign. It doesn't have to be correct, it doesn't even have to be brilliant, but just by writing about it and commenting on it, you'll be showing that you have an interest, that you're enthusiastic, and that more importantly than anything else, you're thinking about the industry that you want to work in. And honestly, that will set you apart, because more people than you think don't properly think about it before they start applying. If you've identified a couple of agencies that you want to work at, why not focus on writing a couple of articles about brands that sit within that agency? If you've got something like this, like a blog or a YouTube or a TikTok, anything to do with advertising that shows that you're thinking about it, then it's going to make everyone else in the room look like a Robin Reliant and you look like a Lamborghini. This video doesn't give you all the answers, but it does start nudging you in the right direction. Start thinking about these questions, come up with your own answers, and then start pushing beyond them. When people look through a stack of applications, they want to come across people who are clearly thinking about advertising and media. So think about whether you want to work in creative or media. Have a think about if you want to work in a big network agency or a smaller independent agency. Try and work out which brands impress you and why their comms impress you. Do an audit of your strengths and weaknesses as a person and try and figure out what kind of role that might lead you towards. And then finally, ask yourself what you're doing outside of your current job or your current studies that's related to advertising, that's going to show that you're thinking about the role that you want to go into, because that's how you'll impress someone who's hiring. If you've watched this and you already work in the business, then you're probably thinking of other questions that people could be asking. If so, share them in the comments below. If you've not done it already, then subscribe now and become one of the imposters with me. Let's crush those career doubts together. Thanks for watching. We've got this.